Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Reed Duke, and it's time for the finals. We've got Jeremy Dezani, lives in Japan by way of France. Of course, he's a former player of the year, Pro Tour champion playing Sultai Control. He's up against Daniel Duterte, now local legend. This is a Seattle local player. I've known Daniel for many years. He actually moved out to New York for a while. He's back here, and he finds himself dominating this tournament. Of matches where cards hit the table, he has not lost. He did decide to concede his last round to his opponent in Swiss, but beyond that, he has won every match that he's played. And he's going to look to see if he can't go end-to-end here and finish off with a trophy and $10,000. But boy, does he have his work cut out for him. He's got Jeremy Dezani, one of the better players in the room, and what's this matchup look like for him? Doesn't look great on paper.
No, but he's been winning this type of matchup all weekend, and the Grixis Delver deck, it just never goes down without a fight. Mm-hmm. If your opponent tries to go a little bit bigger to combat you, you punish them by going smaller, by using your Wastelands and your Dazes to make sure your opponent can't resolve those bigger, more impactful cards.
Wow, full value for Spell Pierce here for Duterte. That was Jeremy Dezani attempting to use a Fatal Push to kill the Deathrite Shaman. And remember, going back a turn, Duterte had an explosive turn last time. He killed his opponent's Deathrite Shaman and played one of his own. Now he gets to untap with, as we call him, DRS. And this could get ugly here for Dezani.
So look at the pattern here, Marshall. Both players have played essentially the same cards. It was turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, turn 2 land drop, kill the opponent's Deathrite Shaman. But what happened was Duterte was on the play, got to get out ahead, have the extra mana. He spell pierced Dezani's removal spell, and now he's sort of won on both battles. He's the one with Deathrite Shaman remaining, and he gets to push his advantage by adding a Delver. Oh, and a Wasteland. This is just the power of Grixis Delver. It's exactly how you draw it up, exactly what you want to happen.
So perfect start here for Daniel Duterte.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, he even gets a chip in there with the Shaman, knock Jeremy Dezani down to 19. But more importantly, he has maintained his threats, and Jeremy has no more lands.
Yeah, the game's over, effectively.
He just transformed his Delver into Insectal Aberration, and this is a very quick clock. 3 in the air, plus a pretty long stream of 2 from the Deathrite Shaman means 5 damage a turn minimum. And Dezani's, he can't do anything. He's staring at a Wasteland.
And it's not like Jeremy Dezani's deck failed him here. He had a colored source of mana and a creature that produces mana, and Duterte just killed everything. He had a Wasteland. He had a Fatal Push.
Oh, my God. Now he has Gurmag Angler too, Reed.
Jeremy's had enough.
Jeremy literally just picked up his permanents. That is game number 1 going to the hometown hero, Daniel Duterte. He is now 1 game away from a GP trophy, and all Jeremy Dezani can do is shake his head. Wow, that was a savaging.
The lesson I've really taken from this broadcast, Marshall.
Don't sit across from Daniel Duterte?
That's one of them. That's one of the big ones.
What's the other one?
Of all the things that are possible in Legacy, such a deep card pool, I mean, pretty much the deepest card pool available in this game, it's not the flashy combos that have seemed to win out. It's more about when all these different things are possible, things get compressed so much and driven into the corner of being hyper efficient.
Yes.
And it's the 2 decks in the finals really indicate that. Grixis Delver in particular, we talked about almost every card costing 1 or sometimes 0 mana and just having to make every trade as efficiently as possible. That's what happens is you can't really be playing cards that are going to cost you 3 and 4 mana and trade for a card that costs less mana because the Grixis Delver the decks like Grixis Delver punished you so much if you leave anything on the table in those exchanges.
They never make poor exchanges. Every card in their deck every card in their deck is that. And you know what? I'll even take that out to a bigger picture here, Reed. It's not just the finals. It's also the whole top 8 kind of showed that, right? You and I were kind of looking at, you're like, wow, no combo decks basically made it into the top 8. Our top 8, just to run it down, was Grixis, Delver, and Miracles, both ×2, Sultai Control, 4-color Control, lands, and a Maverick. You know, and like looking down the list, I mean, 2 Grixis Delvers, you just talked about that. 2 Miracles decks, these are blue-white control decks, also relatively focused on efficiency, although not quite to the extreme that these Grixis Delver decks are. Sultai Control is, I mean, look at Jeremy's list. He doesn't have a lot of fluff in there, I'll tell you that. 4-color Control, similar to what Jeremy's playing. The lands deck is kind of the oddball here because Maverick, again, is a deck that's full of efficient cards, but where's Storm? Where's the turn 2 kills here, right? We just didn't see it. No sneak and show?
Yeah, those decks were out there this weekend, but they did not convert. They're not the ones remaining after
That's right.
15, 16, 17 rounds.
Extreme efficiency is what's being rewarded right now in Legacy. By the way, the reason the players are kind of huddled over the table is they've also got deck lists. Yeah, Daniel says, wait a minute, you got one of those? Maybe I'll switch out one other card. Here's the sideboards. If you look at the bottom of your screen, Jeremy Dezani with a pretty diverse sideboard. I've noticed this for Legacy decks, I guess, because you get to see so many cards, people feel a little more comfortable putting in a wide range of cards, though he does have 3 Surgical Extraction kind of at the peak there.
Talking about sideboarding for this matchup is challenging because these are both multi-dimensional decks. The battles are not fought over one single card or single axis. You have to be prepared to answer your opponent's threats, stick your own threats, grind some card advantage, but not be too slow in the process. So it's very unclear what these players are doing. And the biggest question that they'll have to answer is one that we've touched on earlier in the broadcast, that question of force of will. Do you focus on the mana efficiency and the flexibility that force of will gives you, or are you so terrified of making a 2-for-1 exchange that's not in your favor that you cut Force of Will entirely and bring in cheaper cards like might be Flusterstorm for the Grixis Delver deck. It might be Thoughtseize for Jeremy Dezani here. I'm going to keep a close eye on how these players decide to navigate that question.
I think you could, in good faith, make arguments on both sides. Right?
I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, like, one great example for Jeremy Dezani keeping Force of Will in is exactly what happened in that game. He simply fell too far behind too quickly because Daniel was able to stick a threat and protect it and then make another one. Where you could also make the argument, though, if he does make those exchanges over and over again, he'll simply become card depleted and a threat will be remaining by the end of it.
Yeah, you make a great point, Marshall. Going back to that first game, Jeremy probably would have gladly traded any number of cards in his hand to keep that Deathrite Shaman alive, to counter the Lightning Bolt, because he was mana screwed. He needed the Deathrite Shaman to be able to play the game. So fighting over a very key piece like that can be the difference between winning and losing, but it comes at a cost.
Right. And I'm super curious to see what the mentality and thought process is behind keeping in or taking out Force of Wills. Sometimes you just need it is kind of the mentality, but it can certainly lead you down a path where you run out of gas. And
I can tell you that if I was in either of these players' seats, I would be boarding out Force of Will, but I can't tell you that that's for sure the right decision. Similarly, Cabal Therapy, a card I'm going to be interested about. You don't really want to be guessing in a situation like this, because just as Force of Will being a 2-for-1 strike against you, if Cabal Therapy is a 1-for-0 strike against you, that's equally a disaster. So you really want to be pairing it with Gataxian Probe or Young Pyromancer for it to take full effect. Not to mention just the fact that Jeremy Dezani's deck has a lot of really powerful 1 and 2 of cards. Liliana, the Last Hope, True Name Nemesis. These are some of the most powerful cards in the matchup, but you're not just going to guess. You're not just going to fire off a Cabal Therapy and shoot in the dark that it's going to be Liliana, the Last Hope. That's
would be
not
a sweet way to win
strategy.
a GP, but yeah. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Reed. The chat's been talking about Deathrite Shaman all weekend long. Is it the best card in the form? Is it the best creature in the format? We had a ton of them in the top 8.
Yeah, it's the best creature in the format.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a weird question because it's so contextual, but given our discussions of efficiency and getting ahead in mana, Deathrite Shaman is the best creature in the format. The last time I played Well, sorry, not the last time I played Legacy, but the last time I did well in Legacy. I took it even one step further, and I built my Sultai deck to have not just 4 Deathrite Shamans, but also 4 Noble Hierarchs, as it's just getting ahead in mana. That one-drop mana accelerant I found to be such a valuable play pattern that I wanted to have it every single game, not just the ones that I'm fortunate enough to have Deathrite Shaman in my hand.
I see. And by the way, we saw that in the first game. The players fought over each other's Deathrite Shamans early, and the player who got to keep it around won the game easily. Looks like a mulligan here for Daniel Duterte. Let's see if Jeremy Dezani has a keep on his side. He must have, because he's on the play. So, keeping 7 for Jeremy. Daniel's going to go down to 6. Though, I will say, when it comes to mulligans, with so many cantrips in the format, I mean, people keep one-landers all the time.
Yeah. In that sense, it's very, very likely that Daniel's going to have a functional draw with 6 cards, so there's no need to panic there. However, we've talked so much about efficiency, 2-for-1 trades, 1-for-0 trades. When you start the game down a card, you have to do something special to overcome that disadvantage.
Right, you mentioned that earlier in the weekend, Reed, that as much as you get to manipulate the top cards of your library and even shuffle away some bad cards, it is actually quite difficult in Legacy to get up on cards outright, and we don't see a lot of that between either of these players. It's more like the cards replace themselves.
Jeremy has a few ways in those Baleful Strixes and those Planeswalkers, but the Grixis Delver deck, that's not really its MO. It's pretty much just trading 1-for-1 and focusing on that hyper efficiency to try to get ahead.
All right, we're underway here in game number 2. Is it going to be Daniel Duterte, the hometown hero from Seattle, winning his home GP against Jeremy Dezani, or is Jeremy going to even things up and force the game through? We're going to find out right now. That's Ponder, turn 1 for Daniel, and boom, he found a Daze with the Ponder, and boy did he need it, because Sylvan Library is a card he's definitely concerned about, and he windmills Daze onto the table, and it resolves. Spell Pierce was the draw there. Again, this is all off of the Ponder. He knew he was going to draw it. Uh-oh. Look at Jeremy's hand. He has True Name Nemesis in his hand.
And that's a beating if Daniel's answer is only Spell Pierce.
That's right. Scalding Tarn go. Now, that's a different land. Gives Dezani a little bit of information, though nothing too critical. The good news for Daniel Duterte, though, is that Jeremy doesn't actually have a third land yet.
Spell Pierce it, no?
He didn't. Would you have?
Well, it depends a little bit on my hand, but if I anticipate having to tap out in the next couple of turns, I would have. We have talked about a couple of very, very important cards that Jeremy Dezani has that are vulnerable to Spell Pierce. Liliana the Last Hope and Hymn to Turok jump to mind. However, there's also very, very potent threats that can't be Spell Pierced, and that's why I would be inclined to take my spot and resolve the Spell Pierce when I can, because that Ponder could very well find a True Name Nemesis or a Baleful Strix, and then it's all over but the crying.
Right. In this case, it found him his third land to cast the True Name Nemesis. It was a Polluted Delta. And Daniel did, though, maintain the Spell Pierce in hand, so maybe it'll come in handy later, though, of course, mana considerations can catch up to you a bit, especially when you've cast a Daze for its alternate casting cost. Here's a Ponder now for Daniel.
True Name Nemesis is a card that should play into our Force of Will discussion, because that's a card that's very, very difficult, particularly for Daniel Duterte to answer after the fact if it does get onto the battlefield. He has Daze. Jeremy doesn't. Jeremy has Diabolic Edict and Toxic Deluge. Sorry, Marsh Casualties, or potentially both.
Jeremy has Marsh Casualties, 2 of them in the board.
Yeah, and one Deluge. So he, I don't know, it's a toss-up. But that card is certainly central to the matchup, and when it goes unanswered, it will win the game.
By the way, I do see a Force of Will in hand for Dezani, so a little hint about how he approaches the matchup. Of course, we don't know how many he has, but there's one. He finds Leovold off the top of the library as well. Daniel Duterte with the cleanest answer he has for Leovold. He's got a Lightning Bolt in hand. And Leovold kind of says, take your medicine. Even if you get 2-for-1 there, you're probably happy to have it happen. Though, now we're start talking about Force of Will and things get interesting. So, let's see how this all pans out. What does Jeremy want to lead off with here? Does he just want to slam True Name Nemesis? That's his most powerful option, and that's what he's going to do. Lightning Bolt doesn't do anything. Spell Pierce doesn't do anything. Uh-oh, that's not the look of a happy... Oh, there you go. You have to counter it while it's on the stack, but Daniel says, you got yourself a True Name Nemesis.
Wow, and that is bad news for Daniel.
Card is extremely problematic to deal with. And now Jeremy Dezani gets to play the protect the True Name Nemesis game, and with the Force of Will in hand, he's got to be advantaged in that. This is going to be a Delver of Secrets now for Daniel, but that is way too late to be effective at racing.
Perhaps not way too late. If it transforms right away and Jeremy doesn't have a removal spell, which those are both pretty tall orders, but if they both happen, then Daniel will be able to keep pace, trading 3 damage for 3 damage, and his deck is a little more aggressive. He's got the lightning bolts that Jeremy doesn't, so it's not a completely hopeless race, but we can catch a glimpse and see that Jeremy's hand is still pretty stacked. I don't think it's going to be as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that also all depends on it transforming right away as well, which isn't guaranteed. Well, here's Marsh Casualties right away. Also, Jeremy has backup removal spells. He's got a Fatal Push, so he can't cast it at the moment. Now Daniel's going to decide to deploy the Spell Pierce. And I think Jeremy's just going to let it happen. He still has the Fatal Push in his hand. Again, he can't cast it this turn because he doesn't have any more black mana. Let's see if this thing's going to transform. Yes. Spell Pierce, though the fact that Jeremy knows about it makes it significantly worse, I'm assuming. Ooh, upside down land. Tricky. Attack you for 3.
So while I'm not necessarily on the same page as Jeremy in terms of keeping in Force of Will in the matchup, I am most definitely on the same page as him about the way it should be played, which is to pretty much hold it until an emergency situation arises. And this,
like an opposing
this certainly counts as an emergency situation, but the downside is he also knows the opponent is about to Spell Pierce it.
Right, so what's up with that?
I don't know. It's a bad spot.
But why would he even cast the Force of...
Well, he might want to fight through the Spell Pierce. Well,
does he have a Toxic Deluge in his hand, perhaps?
Or another Marsh Casualties or a Snapcaster Mage. Those are the cards that he really needs in this situation.
Okay, yeah. So there's actually a lot of reason why he may do that, even though it's a steep cost to pay.
But you can. The thing is, you can make that trade at any point.
Right.
You're not getting ahead in mana.
And he had to exile the Leovold to cast the Force of Will.
Oh boy.
There's Toxic Deluge. But he'll lose his own True Name here, right?
He will. So we're back to square one.
Okay. Back to business for everybody here. And can Daniel or Jeremy stick a threat first? Land. Is that a Planeswalker in hand for Daniel Duterte?
Yes, it is.
That's going to be a Liliana, the last hope for him. The thing has just been the card of the weekend for me. I did not expect to see it that often, and it just keeps popping up in these key times.
Card of the weekend's a great way to put it. This is the card that's most overperformed my expectations on the weekend.
And it looks like he's going to minus it. That should get him his True Name back. Oh, he's got choices now. There's a Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, so he's choosing between a card that he can cast right away or a card that's going to be more potent in the long run.
Whew. Liliana, the Last Hope was a good one. Now, the difference, of course, between taking one of the 1-drops is that he can cast it immediately.
Yep.
And that's what he's going to do. He's just going to take the Delver and try to get another threat going. Jeremy's down to 13. Jeremy still has that Fatal Push in his hand. And that's, of course, the downside of taking a card like Delver of Secrets, is that it's vulnerable to removal even if it is a bit faster. Where True Name Nemesis, you know, if you can get that thing resolved. Dezani's already used up a few of the cards that actually affected. 1 Marsh Casualties, 1 Toxic Deluge. And we're going to see Fatal Push. Well, maybe not right away.
I really want Jeremy to cast the Fatal Push before he ends his turn, because if he allows the Delver of Secrets to trigger, Daniel can effectively use it as a scry in combination with that Misty Rainforest.
Right, all those little tiny edges that you get. If he sees a card that he doesn't like, he can shuffle it away. That's a great point, Reed. An interesting interaction. We'll see if Jeremy's thinking the same thing you are. No, he has passed the turn, and the trigger's on the stack.
I don't like it,
look
Marshall.
at this, yeah. Now, as it turns out, is Daniel just going to shuffle away this Dismember? He has no target for it right now.
Well, I mean, why even give him the choice?
No, I know. I'm saying it might actually punish him here. Like, not only is it incorrect to give him the option, but it might actually come back to bite him really hard, and it is.
I would shuffle it away.
Yeah.
I like it because Jeremy's particular suite of creatures is not very good at pressuring Liliana the Last Hope, short of Leovold and True Name Nemesis, which they're not that great to answer after the fact with Dismember.
So Jeremy gets punished.
I think so, yeah.
Right? I mean, this draw step is a different card that Daniel's getting instead of a Dismember, which is, well, at least it was bad enough that Daniel didn't want it at the time. So upticks Liliana the Last Hope, passes the turn back, Wasteland off the top for Dezani. He's almost out of gas, but he does have a Brainstorm, and that can really turn things around quickly. Unless you find 3 lands. I guess he can shuffle away a couple of them. Wow.
Should keep 2 fetch lands.
And he's out of gas. He has nothing. 2 lands left in his hand. He will get to shuffle and get a fresh look at the top of the library, but he has to pass back. Brainstorm off the top now for Duterte. Ooh, this has been a good game.
It's been a great game.
Yeah, Dezani forced to use Toxic Deluge to wipe the board, unfortunately killing his own True Name Nemesis and turning a 2-for-1 into a 2-for-2.
So we talked at the beginning of the game about Daniel being down a card from the mulligan, having to do something special to overcome it. He overcame his mulligan when Jeremy Dezani had to cast Force of Will, which traded for a Spell Pierce. And he pushed that advantage when he was able to resolve Liliana the Last Hope, which so far has been a 2-for-1 advantage. Could potentially be even more than that if he's able to untap with it yet again.
We have already seen one Liliana the Last Hope Ultimate this weekend. In fact, today.
We've seen all 3 modes of this Planeswalker be extremely effective.
Yeah, and now the cat's out of the bag as well. Daniel knows, though, that there's a fetch land and that Jeremy's going to be drawing clean, but still, he knows he's on stone nothing, so he's just going to play out a Deathrite Shaman plus Liliana and pass, and he's ahead. Back to being ahead with Jeremy Dezani cold top decking here.
Jeremy Dezani really needs Abrupt Decay. He really needs to kill that Liliana before it -2s again. Otherwise, he's just hemorrhaging resources against the Planeswalker.
It's a land off the top, Reed. This is not coming together for Jeremy Dezani. He's going to use up a Wasteland here, but that's just all he can do for the turn before passing the turn back to Daniel. Is the line of play to just up minus on Liliana? That's what you would do here, right?
It is what I would do.
Yeah. So he can get back a True Name Nemesis and cast it. Mill 2.
He could Brainstorm and then clear the top of his library with the Liliana, but it's also fine to hang on to the Brainstorm for a little while.
And there it is. True Name Nemesis is going to resolve. We know that because Jeremy has 2 lands in his hand. And here's a big top deck from Dezani. He looks at it slowly. He finds Fatal Push. Now that will take care of the Deathrite Shaman, but it does not answer either of the other 2 permanents. And Jeremy Dezani is in a world of hurt here.
At this point, the only way Dezani gets back in the game is if he draws a card next turn that can convert into multiple resources. So what I'm talking about is Jace, the Mind Sculptor, or Brainstorm into multiple important cards, or potentially like a Snapcaster Mage, but even that's pretty tough in the face of Liliana the Last Hope.
That was a land off the top for Duterte, but he's going to crack in there for 3 damage with True Name Nemesis. That's going to knock Dezani down to 7. This clock is very quick. Next turn, Jeremy Dezani's dead if he doesn't find something. What did he find? He's got to have an answer. He can certainly use Fatal Push to keep himself alive for one more turn. He actually has 2 Fatal Push in hand now, Reed. So he's going to go Fatal Push now, which means he's going to be at 5. He's going to take 3 from the True Name, and he's going to have 1 draw step. If he doesn't find something, then native Seattle-ite Daniel Duterte is going to take down his home GP in front of a lot of his friends here. We have got a massive crowd standing behind us, and they're getting really nervous. And I think they can sense that Daniel Duterte is on the verge of potentially winning this GP. You're going to hear him if he wins, too. You ready for this, Reed, in case that happens? Now, Dezani's not out of this. He still has a draw step, but boy, is he in trouble. You said Jace the Mind Sculptors.
Did Daniel just shuffle away his lightning bolt?
I didn't see. Lightning Bolt would have been lethal.
Yeah. I mean, the 2 cards left in his hand are pretty fantastic, but I could have sworn he had lightning bolt a second ago.
Oh, he just top decked a Forked Bolt. That's 3 damage. He can just simply aim it at Jeremy Dezani's head. And that's it. Daniel Duterte wins the GP. A big smile. Everybody's happy for him here. And he ran the tables. Nobody could stop Daniel Duterte this weekend in Legacy. He took Grixis Delver. He's taken home the trophy, the $10,000. Congratulations, Daniel. I've been playing PTQs with that guy for a while, and he is a super nice dude, and it's awesome to see him win a GP here in Seattle where he lives. Awesome stuff. Another strong finish for Jeremy Dezani, but he's going to have to live with second place, a big pile of pro points, and another story as Daniel greets his fans. You can probably hear them in the background. There's the tail of the tape right there. Daniel Duterte went through Miranda Keith, Sam Black, and Jeremy Dezani. He did not have an easy route.
No, certainly not. Just fantastic tournament, and I really appreciate Daniel showcasing for us the hallmark deck of Legacy. Yeah, really just putting on a great show and showing us what the format's all about. Fantastic
Super
stuff.
fun to watch. And, boy, I got to say it's really cool to see somebody I've known for quite a while win a GP here in Seattle, especially because I'm from here as well. And you can hear everybody in the background's real excited for Daniel as well. What a fun one. It sounds like we've got Daniel down in the feature match area for an interview. Daniel Duterte, Marshall with Reed in the booth. Congratulations.
Hey, y'all. Thanks. Oh,
my
Jesus
God.
Christ.
I can't believe you just won a GP, man.
I can't believe it either.
What's going through your mind?
I ran hotter than the sun this weekend. Oh, my God.
Most people that win GPs do. Don't worry. You're all good. Now, let's take a deep breath. You decided to play Grixis Delver for this tournament. What made you choose that deck?
I had been playing it for 6 months. So Robin Alberg roped me into the Team Trios Grand Prix in January. She locked me in about September, so I'm like, okay, I better start playing Legacy. Looked at what was winning. I was like, okay, Grixis Delver looks like, I guess, if not the best deck, the most solid deck. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to jam this for 4 months. Turned out I really liked the format, and I kept jamming it a bunch when I was bored of Standard. And, turns out I have to play both for my hometown Grand Prix.
I got bad news about Standard.
I didn't get to play my deck. I worked on my Standard deck.
I'm sorry, man. They started without you. You're going to have to settle for the win. Of course, this is a big deal, too. You get the $10,000 of pro points, but also that Pro Tour qualification as well. You excited to be out at the PT?
Yeah. It's going to be my second one. I'm so excited.
It's so funny because, this is interesting for me personally because I've known you for a long time, and I've played PT keys with you before.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the easy way to win one, right? Just get the top bit of a GP. Now, also, I wanted to ask you, of matches you actually drew opening hands and played, did you lose any?
Matches?
Like I know that you scooped in round 15. Did you lose any of the matches that you actually played?
I didn't drop a match today. Or this weekend.
The whole tournament,
Nope.
You didn't even lose. You just went end to end.
Nope.
Really impressive.
Wow. You got Reed Duke jealous over here, Daniel. Congratulations.
Oh, man.
Fantastic job. All right, we're going to let you go because we know you got your fans waiting for you to give you a hug. Your wife, everybody's here. Congratulations, Daniel. It was super awesome seeing you win, man.
Oh, my God. Thanks.
All right, great stuff from Daniel. He's obviously overwhelmed. It's got to be crazy winning it here as well. You know, every Magic community has their scene, right? Everybody knows everybody around their scene, with a few people occasionally popping up to go to the Pro Tour. And Daniel has been in the Seattle Magic scene for a long time. He's a super nice guy. Everybody loves him, and you can see how happy everybody locally is here to root for him. So
a lot of excitement down there.
Yeah, it's really great to see a hometown hero take the thing down. There's his wife right there waiting for him, and that's Robin that he mentioned as well. She's also a staple of the Seattle Magic scene. Great stuff from the feature match area. Boy, was it fun bringing you Legacy over the course of the weekend. Really great format, and, you know, we don't get to bring it to you every weekend, but when we do, it's great. And we wanted to say thank you first to you for joining us. It was awesome having you along for this GP, but as you know, we're not done yet. It's only Saturday. We've still got tomorrow to bring you, and that is going to be day 2 of Standard. We're here at 9 a.m. local time. That's Pacific time. Reed, you want to come back and commentate with me tomorrow? Or
I would love to.
Okay, let's do it. So 9 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll see you there.